It's time for another Real Talk video. And in today's topic, we're talking about something that's pretty controversial. I was just at a Toyota event and this was a hot button issue, Nathan. The rise of the hybrid off-road SUV, maybe even the rise of the hybrid off-road truck. What does it mean in the world of electrification? And is it a good idea?
That's an excellent point of view, because many of you are saying, it's a bad idea because electrification is evil, or you're saying it's a good idea because electrification can help our vehicles go off-road. But what type of electrification is there? Well, there's regular hybrids, right? Mm-hmm. There's plug-in hybrids, essentially a larger battery, a little bit more work going into the electric motor. And then there's, of course, range extension, which is essentially an electric powertrain that has a generator of some sort that's pumping power into a battery.
You're exactly right, Nathan. And then on the far end of the spectrum, we have the full battery electric EV. Mm-hmm. Now, the vehicle I think that's getting the most controversy out there is the new Toyota Land Cruiser 2024. Return of the Land Cruiser name. It's been gone for a couple of years, and it's launching exclusively as a 4-cylinder turbo hybrid.
I think the turbo part is also a little bit of a controversy, but the reality is this is the only way it comes, and essentially it is the powertrain that's coming out of a Toyota Tacoma, like the TRD Pro package.
You're exactly right, Nathan. Now let's talk about some of the benefits from Toyota's viewpoint on the hybridization. One of the biggest is, of course, fuel economy and emissions. You see a big improvement, certainly from emissions, and maybe a slight improvement in fuel economy by adding that electric motor with that high voltage battery. Now, some of the drawbacks, Nathan, well, the number one thing people are concerned about is longevity.
Reliability, especially with Toyota products. A lot of people are concerned that you're adding complexity to something that was very simple before. I mean, it was a V8 that was powering a couple generations of Land Cruiser, and now we're moving on to this rather complex setup. However, many people who follow Toyota would say Toyota knows what they're doing when it comes to hybridization.
Yeah, 2 decades in the hybrid landscape. If there's one manufacturer that has built more hybrids than any other on the planet, it is Toyota. Now let's talk about some of the concerns that folks have. The off-road drivability of the hybrid mated with the turbocharger. Is it going to be smooth off-road? Is it going to be too jerky when you have that instant electric torque coupled with the turbocharging? Is that a concern you have?
It can be, but there are a couple things to think about. Now, first of all, with electric powertrains, you have maximum torque at 0 RPM. So if you're going up and over a boulder, and we've actually had experience with this, you're actually getting that maximum torque the minute you touch that pedal, so you can ease up and over that rock, as an example, with very little effort. However, the other side of it is with the turbocharger, there may be some lag, and maybe your timing's not going to work out to where you're able to modulate that just right to get over those issues, those types of performance undulations that you're going through as you're going off-road. However, there's something very important to mention, and that is the second thing that people are concerned about is weight, because batteries are not light, and you're adding an electric motor to this whole setup. Yes, indeed, you're going to have a heavier vehicle, but I don't think it's going to be as heavy as a V8.
The interesting thing about the implementation of an electrical system off-road is we've had enough experience with various EV off-roaders now, or hybrid off-roaders, where it really depends on the manufacturer and the tuning. And it really all comes down to tuning. Yep. And I'll give you an example. I've driven the Rivian R1T off-road with the 4-motor electric setup, and I found it to be rather unrefined, especially when dealing with torque transfer left to right in an elephant hole situation. It struggles. Then I drove the dual-motor Rivian off-road, which has 1 motor in the front, 1 in the back, and it was way better. They were able to maximize traction with brakes instead of torque vectoring, and I found it to be a much smoother, effective system. Now, we've both driven the Wrangler 4xe, the plug-in hybrid Wrangler off-road, and my impression is, in the hybrid mode, it's pretty good. You've got that little 2-liter turbo working with the electric motor. It feels great. In the electric-only mode, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a mess. Trying to drive that thing slowly and smoothly off-road in EV is pretty challenging.
Really, the only benefit is that you can hear nature around you, which is something Jeep uses as part of their marketing. But the reality is leave-in and hybrid mode is the way to go, because that gives you maximum range. And at the same time, you're getting the benefit of both using the 2-liter turbo and, of course, the gas the electric motor.
Yeah, and I just found that, being able to two-foot it with that gas engine is so much smoother than trying to effectively crawl in low range in the electric mode. And I've talked to a bunch of other 4xe owners, and that seems to be kind of the general consensus that if you're doing any kind of hardcore stuff, you want the hybrid engine running. Now, Nathan, beyond just a standard hybrid, like in the Jeep, there is the plug-in hybrid, which goes from like maybe a 1 or 2 kilowatt hour battery up to a 15, 17, 20 kilowatt hour battery that gives you maybe 20, 25 miles of all electric range. Do you like this solution?
For some people, it's a perfect, excellent solution because in many cases, you're taking the kids to school or you're going to work back and forth. You got a 10-mile run and you really don't have to see a gas pump anytime, within the near future. You could just worry about it in a month or two. That's great for certain people who have those types of lifestyles. However, off-roading, that may be a bit of a different story. For instance, we recently tested several times, actually, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. And I think that the solution that they came up with in terms of its range and its overall capability is not too bad. However, it is a heavier vehicle. It's really not much of an off-roader in terms of its dimensions and whatnot. But the actual powertrain that it's using is pretty interesting. And I think in the future, that may be something worth looking at. But right now, I don't think it's refined enough to work off-road as well as other systems.
The other thing you need to keep in mind with a plug-in hybrid is if you look at that Land Cruiser, it's got a fairly small high voltage battery. If you look at a 4xe Grand Cherokee or Wrangler, that's really when you're going to start seeing that weight disadvantage because you have to have a much larger battery to propel the vehicle on electricity. And then when that battery is depleted, it still helps out on the trail. There's always a buffer, but for the most part, you're carrying around 12 kilowatt hours of battery that's empty that you're not using.
Hundreds of pounds that you may not want to have sitting on the very belly of your vehicle.
Now, this vehicle behind me is employing an interesting approach, and this vehicle was revealed just a couple hours ago. It's from that brand new company, Ineos, who has a Grenadier, which we purchased as a long-termer, and it's a vehicle called the Fusilier. Yeah.
That's my guess. I have no idea if either of us have said that correctly. Yet another bar that is named after Ineos did build recently a very good off-roader. And this is their second offering, and it's not quite what we expected.
Nope.
This is a battery electric vehicle, and there is a range extender. Am I correct?
You're exactly right. So it is developed by a company called Magna, who has got a long history in developing vehicles. And it's got two options. It's got a fully electric vehicle, pretty simple, huge battery, plug it in, and they're predicting around, I think it was 250 miles of range. Or you can opt for a range extended version, which drops that battery capacity by about 30% and adds in an internal combustion engine. Now, this is not a plug-in hybrid because in a plug-in hybrid, it is completely fine and you can do whatever, drive it around on gasoline like it's a normal car. Typically in a range extender, the purpose of a range extender is to get you to the next charger. So it's a much smaller gasoline or diesel engine that creates electricity, which extends the operating range of the vehicle, but you might lose some towing capacity, some top speed, maybe some off-roadability, so you can get to the next charger, plug in, and continue operating it as a electric vehicle. It's kind of like a train, right? Like a train operates sort of similar.
Yeah, it's very similar to how certain trains run. It's also, if you guys remember the BMW i3 that actually had what was known as the Rex, I believe, which was a range extender. It was basically a scooter motor in there that had like a 2-gallon gas tank, and that would help power those batteries to get you further. But the thing is, and keep this in mind throughout, and also we're going to see this very soon with Ram. They're going to be building their range extending version of their pickup truck.
Ram Charger.
And all of these vehicles have the same thing in common, which is that the gas engine does not have a physical connection to a gearbox and or the wheels. It is simply a generator that's there to put power back into the batteries. And there's pluses and minuses with that. One of the benefits of that is that using a vehicle like that and having a generator means that you can actually go to a work site or a campsite and you'll have a lot of extra power that you could sit there and rumble off so you can power a work site, which I think is really cool. The negative is, and this is the biggest thing, and we'll come back to this again and again and again, weight. And when you're going off-road, the last thing you want is a really heavy vehicle.
And once again, you have two powertrains now. The other concern I have in that i3 we had driving up the interstate in Colorado, that was a very small internal combustion engine. It was a little 2-cylinder thing. And we were doing like 35, maybe 30 miles an hour in some places when the road conditions are going 70, because it's not intended to be a permanent drive unit. It's intended to get you to the next charger.
Right.
And then, of course, the final type of electrification is the fully electric 4-wheel drive, like what Rivian's doing, now like what Tesla is doing. Everyone's coming out with one. Jeep's got one on the horizon as well. So of all the solutions, Nathan, right, the fully electric does offer some exciting things like a lot of instant torque. It's got a lot of weight, like you mentioned. You can have a flat underbody with no drive shaft. But then, of course, the big question is, well, what happens if the battery dies on the trail, if I can't get to the next charger?
Then you are a very heavy paperweight, because we've had this experience before. Now, we've gotten lucky because we managed to get out of the situations that we had when we had our GMC Hummer EV. And we've taken it off-road, and it proved to be decent off-road, especially it had this unusual crab walk thing that it could do. And,
it was cool.
and when the power was working the right way, this thing was nearly unstoppable. However, over 9,000 pounds. It's a lot of weight. And in addition to the fact that it was extraordinarily expensive, and this type of vehicle, if you think about it, you're getting to a trailhead with something that is only powered by electricity, meaning that when you run out, if you want someone to come and bail you out, unlike a gas can that you could just shove in there and in a couple minutes you can be out of there, you're going to either have someone figure out a way to tow you out of there, or they're going to have to bring a generator, which kind of defeats the purpose, to charge you up and get you out of there.
Right.
So we're not quite there yet with off-roading, doing real overlanding, I should say, with electric vehicles. However, there's another side to this. You mentioned torque, and torque is huge. Having something that has insane amounts of torque that's super green for the people who want a super green vehicle and being able to go off-road, that is a big plus. And if you're doing light off-roading, and if you're not too far from a service station or a place that you can actually get your electricity, then it's not so bad. So I think that there's a give and take to this. I think that the range extending setups might be the wave of the future in 10 years or so. That might be what you want to go far off-road and have massive range. But for those of you who are doing it with purely electric vehicles, I think shorter ranges are the future for those vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you could make the argument the best solution is what we have now, which is just straight up internal combustion. And to a large extent, I agree. However, with the way the landscape in the automotive industry is going, there is going to be more and more hybrid, plug-in hybrid, range extended vehicles coming. And of course, in the comments, you could say, well, I'm not going to go buy that. That's fine. But, you know, not to get political, but certain states, certain countries are mandating this shift to electrification. So it's happening, you know, whether some of you like it or not.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you want to get on board with it? Do you think that the standard hybrid is the way to go? Is the plug-in hybrid the way to go? Or is a fully electric or range extender option? So a lot of interesting things to discuss here, Nathan. Personally, regarding the Land Cruiser, I am excited for it. Couple of other things worth noting. It's, I think if I recall from the launch, a nickel metal hydride pack, which is technology from like 30, 40 years ago.
Easily.
So super old, heavy technology, but dirt reliable. Like Toyota has that stuff down for longevity. And, you know, I think it's going to be very well integrated knowing Toyota. I've driven the 2.4 now off-road with the Tacoma. It's got peak torque at 1,700 RPM. Everyone's like, oh, the old V6 had more torque low end. No, it didn't. It didn't make peak torque to like 4,400. Add the electric motor into that, and it could be really cool. The battery's tucked up high, should be out of the way from water fording, which is another concern. And I'm really, really excited about that. So I'm not afraid of it. I'm just not sure whether or not the implementation of like the range extender or the fully electric are going to be as good as some of the gas stuff today.
We're still in the infant stages of these types of technologies when you're talking about producing them for the masses. So I think that within the next few years, they're going to get a real handle on this. And it'll be cool because you will be able to choose everything from a regular internal combustion engine all the way to a full electric vehicle and everything in between. I think that'll be the next golden age of, driving for you folks out there who really want to go off-road and want variety.
Well, folks, we'd love to hear your opinion in the comment section. We read just about every comment. As always, it's been Tommy.
And Nathan.
We'll see you on another episode.